to put aside my own very strongly held beliefs about something and decide the case on my desk based on the law, on the facts, and on the Constitution. And if you're not willing to do that, frankly, you should not be a judge. The one thing that you don't want in a judge is someone who is what I call outcome-oriented. And I'll tell you what outcome-oriented is. It's someone who decides the case right out in front and says, I want this person to win, or I want that person to win. And then, in order to write the opinion or write the decision, you have to start massaging the facts a little. You have to start massaging the law a little. You have to overlook sometimes the Constitution in order to arrive at a predetermined decision. And guess what? If you're intellectually honest, that decision will not write. We have a saying in my chambers with my law clerks that if it doesn't write, it can't be right. And what I mean by that is if I sit down at my computer and I start writing an opinion, if I get stuck, if I can't come to the end of my case, there must be a problem with it, and I've got to start from square one. Thank you.
Hi. I absolutely think judges should be elected and should be accountable to the people. Now, why is this so important? If I had like a magical wish list, how would I change it? And the way in which I would change it is I would allow judges to talk more about what they do and who they are, and not be gagged as much by the rules, the judicial rules of conduct. Now, that being said, I think people have a right to know what their judges are and what their judges do, and who their judges are and how their judges think. But we really need to think about, if we want to judge, in other words, when you're looking at a case, you might think that this criminal is a horrible person, and you know what, they might be. But the bottom line is that if we are a country of laws and not a country of men, we don't do vigilante, popular demand justice. That's for the legislature. That's for the executive branch. Okay, those guys should all be subject to that kind of decision making. The way I personally would look at judges, and the way that I think we really should look at judges, is by looking at their process. Did they follow the formula? Did they start out with the Constitution, which, by the way, last time I checked, is a law. And in fact, in my personal opinion, it's the ultimate law. So we start there, and we look at it. And if the state violates somebody's constitutional rights, we have an obligation to uphold that Constitution, for whatever reason. Now, that might not always give us the most popular choice, because sometimes people look at it and they're like, why do those judges let those criminals go free? Well, guess what? Everybody who comes into our courtroom, you got a winner and you got a loser. Half the audience thinks you're a genius, the other half of the audience thinks that you made the most horrible decision ever. But that's the tough part about being judges, because when you're a judge, you apply the law as written, you look at the Constitution and apply it, and you know what? You don't look at the outcome. Being conservative is a lifestyle, and it's a philosophy, and it's not an outcome. And so that's what I would do if I had my druthers. Although that's not always the case, but I keep working toward that goal within the realm of what we do as judges and what I do as an attorney. Thank you.
Now, ladies, there's enough interest in your being here tonight that we already have a question from the audience. So, Ms. O'Toole, I think it's your turn to go first.
Sure.
This question is falsification of official court records a serious crime in your mind? And, if so, will you pledge to use the power of your position as an appellate court judge to hold any and all involved in such crimes accountable to the people you serve without recrimination or rationalization?
Yes. I'll follow the law. If it's false, it's false. Now, the issue there is it in the record? We are appellate judges, or we're running for the appellate court. And so what we have to do is we are stuck with what's in the record. We are a court of review. We are the quality control unit. We sit in panels of 3. So stuff can be done in the trial court. It may not be in the record. Maybe the attorney didn't put it there. And we are very much stuck with what the trial testimony is. The Court of Appeals does not take testimony. So what we look for is we look for error. If the trial court made a mistake, if the attorney made a mistake, if evidence wasn't let in, that's what we look for. So yes, I would absolutely feel falsification, as I believe it's a violation under the Ohio Revised Code, is wrong. We and the appellate court are stuck with what's below us and the assignments of error that are raised in that case. So that's just a constraint that we have. But I would absolutely, best of my ability up to the law, I would absolutely agree with that statement. Thank you.
If it came to my attention that a court document was falsified, I'm not constrained by the record. The only constraints that I have are law, constitution, professional code that attorneys abide by, and that would, apart from the case, that would be reported to the appropriate officials. And if an attorney is involved in it, then I would be compelled to file a disciplinary action, a complaint with the Ohio Supreme Court to bring that to the court's attention as well. So that's it.
I believe that, Lou, you have the slips of paper. So if anybody has a question that you would like to submit for our judge candidates this evening, just raise your hand and Lou will get you the piece of paper so you can write out your question.
Now, one of our rules for proceeding and how these sessions are conducted is that the candidates are permitted to ask questions of each other or to submit questions to be asked of each other. And Judge Trapp submitted a question for Judge O'Toole. Now, I know that Judge Trapp is up first this time, and since obviously I'm not going to ask your question of you, I will ask a similar.
I'll take the question.
Well, you can, but give me a second because I'll ask a similar question of Judge Trapp to start. Recently, you were a candidate for the Ohio Supreme Court. Now you're a candidate for the 11th District Court of Appeals. If you are satisfied to be a judge on the Court of Appeals, why did you run for the Supreme Court? Where would you rather be?
Good question. My goal after serving my profession and serving my clients for 25 years was to become an appellate court judge, hearing appeals. That's all I ever wanted to be. And it didn't matter whether it was serving as an appellate court judge 5 counties in Northeast Ohio or serving 88 counties in the Ohio Supreme Court. I love my job. I have found a calling, researching and writing and reviewing the record and bringing all the skills that I have and passion for the law and for legal reform to the role as an appellate court judge. Before I even became a judge, Cindy, I was State Bar Association president. I had to run statewide and be elected by the attorneys of Ohio to that position. So when there was an opening on the Ohio Supreme Court, as an attorney, I was asked to run, and I refused. Because I said, you have to be a judge before you can sit on the Ohio Supreme Court. Later, after I was on the court in 2010, I was approached again to run. And they prevailed on me not because I thought that I could win that job. I know how hard it is to run statewide and to defeat an incumbent judge. But I knew one thing, and that was that year of my life, in going around and talking to groups like you, to newspapers, to media, to bar associations, to good government groups, it gave me the bully pulpit. And all of you who run for office know what that means. People have to listen to you. And I was able to raise some of the issues, some of the problems that I saw in the administration of the court. And the other thing that the Supreme Court does that we don't do is they regulate our profession. And who better to talk about reform than the past president of the association? And I did some good. We now have, because of my campaign, we have a recusal rule at the Ohio Supreme Court, so that if someone thinks that a justice is biased and shouldn't sit on that court,